All right, we're back. Dude, where'd you go, man? Like take a dump or something?
I had a no. There's I'm doing some shit downstairs. I'm replacing a pipe for my utilities district.
Uh,
After my this is really fucking weird. After my last girlfriend moved out, my utility bill got cut by a significant amount. So I guess they thought that I was cheating somehow. So
what?
then they had to
Replacing the meter.
yeah. Yeah, so now they want to replace the meter. But in order to do that, I had to get my uncle to come over and
Wow.
like change a valve or something. So they were calling over to set up the time to come over and finally do that.
Oh man, I've never heard of an electric company suspecting somebody of cheating like that. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, neither have I. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but
All right, well let's kind of refocus back on the TB thing. And so another news that he announced was Axiom is closing. And Axiom, for those who don't know, is a team that he and Jenna started roughly, man, 3 years ago, I think now.
Yeah, three.
Yeah, 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
3 years.
It was like the summer that of 2012, I believe. And they announced
Yeah.
that they're closing it, so it's kind of sad. I mean, that's obviously it was
Yeah.
always StarCraft 2 based for the most part. And Axiom for me, honestly, it was the only team I can think of, and obviously I have probably more of a limited esports history than you guys, or at least following esports. But it was one of the first teams that I could say that was started out of caring for players. Like they knew that it was just going to be, a project where they just lose money, and of course they would try their best not to. Just I mean, it's the just the smart thing to do. Just use whatever they can and try to build a successful team. But they started it knowing that it probably is going to lose money. But the point is to really, keep these players that they care about, like Crank, and end up being a lot of Slayers, just former Slayers players, going, and this was like their way of basically doing it instead of just like being just a individual sponsor or that sort of thing. Creating a team so that they could kind of house these people and continue their careers. Thoughts on Axiom closing, Matt? How about you? Have you go first.
I mean, I can understand why they would have it closed. They haven't really done anything. Their players are kind of losing relevance. Running a team is super hard, and they weren't getting any real return out of it.
Yeah.
It's really sad though, just because they were very much like a
Wait,
community
what?
oriented thing.
I was under the impression that they were closing it because Total Biscuit didn't want to deal with managing that while also simultaneously managing the cancer.
Right, because they were saying like they wanted to play in pro league, but it's just not possible now. So
Yeah,
I can
I don't think
understand.
I don't think
it
has
had
anything
more to do with
like
yeah.
turns.
Had more to do with
I think the cancer part I think was the very relevant part there because Total Biscuit is ran. I'm kind of going up with what Chris said. Like I'm pretty sure Axiom is, or I'm sorry, I'm almost positive that Axiom is always run at a pretty decent loss. I doubt that they're just closing it now. Like they just happen to be closing it now because they decided it's not financially prudent to run the team. I think it's only because of the Total Biscuit, kind of the cancer resurgence.
Yeah. If anything, I think Jenna.
I think it's relevant
needs
too
to
that they've had a pretty hard year or two results wise.
Yeah, it hasn't been a good year. That's to your point. But I think they were still planning on trying to get into Pro League, or there were still future plans for Axiom, I believe. So besides the fact that I think they were having bad results, I believe it's more to do with TB's health, and Jenna obviously needs to spend more time on that. Jenna was the person for the most part, I think, running Axiom and doing a lot of that. John was probably doing some, but I think Jenna was a lot of the operations behind that too.
I think that Axiom was Jenna's quote unquote project. Like that was her thing, right? That was always the
Do you
impression
remember
that I
it
got when I
originally
read
was?
it. Like,
And then she made a big post once about how she wasn't going to do
Oh,
esports
that's
stuff
right. That's
anymore.
right. And then John, yeah, that's
So I don't
right.
actually
I forgotten
know.
about that. Yeah, after the whole take
the
thing,
take
right?
thing?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
take thing. That's right. She transferred it over to John. So yeah, that makes complete sense then. If John was for the most part running.
Yeah,
running the team.
it's definitely linked to the other announcement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's always sad to see organizations, especially one that is being run by sort of good and ethical people, kind of shut down. But I think under the circumstances, and Matt alluded to some points that I'm sure were factored into the decision. Maybe if it had been a far more I guess successful, although that does sound harsh, that I'm implying it's unsuccessful, which I don't believe. But if it had been a bit more successful, and the players have been a bit more successful, I think probably they would have handed the reins over to someone else. But obviously, at this particular moment in time, it just simply isn't viable to even put the effort into that handover. You know, it's just better to close it all together. And you know, they had a good run, and it was a good exercise. I mean, a lot of good.
They won a GSTL, so
yeah, they won a
the
GSTL.
title.
Yeah,
and of course, not only that, there was some good stuff for the industry that came out of it as well. Which, you know, for example, I think we had John on one of the shows where he was showing everybody the deck that they made for Axiom, and he did that whole thing about this is how you sort of entice sponsorships, and this is how you work with partnerships and stuff. So as an esports exercise, they were quite an inspirational organization from a business perspective.
Yeah, at least the learning, like the transparency and things like that.
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
was great for learning more about it. Even just the starting it. I remember when Jenna was on climbing the ladder, and it was probably right after she had officially started Axiom, and I forget it. No, it was Mark that was on at the time, and you know, we just found out even more about just the whole Korean lifestyle. You know, just the Korean players, now they're over romanticized, and just the crappy lives they were running actually in the houses and stuff like that. So, I mean, lots of great things came from it, education wise, and you know, I think these players. I mean, these players, if you see their reactions or their you know, kind of last comments or, you know, letters to John and Jenna, I mean, you can see that their lives were changed by them. You know what I mean? It wasn't like your typical player who just like felt like they've been used, and like, you know, it's you know, it's kind of like, okay, like this ending of a team is just like a little bit of a relief. At the same time, it's you know, it's not as much or thankfulness and that sort of thing that you see, you know, from these players. So you can tell that they treated the players well, and there was even some camaraderie.
Has anything bad ever come from Axiom?
No,
I don't think they've ever been involved in like anything like negative.
Well, there
like,
was
that I can
something.
think of ever,
like, I mean, Crank. There was like these very gray areas where Crank like threw a game or something like that. I remember that. Like it was some meaningless game.
Yeah,
it was some
against one of his teammates.
Yeah.
No, it was that
the MLG, that
MLG,
Root thing against Root. Was it against
two teammates were playing each other? And
yeah,
one of them...
something like that. One of
them. Yeah, Root did that too, didn't they?
Yeah, Root did that too at the same one,
yeah.
I believe. So
yeah, I mean, if that's the worst,
that
thing,
was
I mean,
like the worst
that's...
thing, I believe. So, yeah. Anyways, yeah, for the most part, I think it was a well-run, or at least a very ethical organization, which is pretty tough to come by these days in esports.
Yeah, sadly true.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, maybe one day Axiom will come back, and you know, let's see their return. But yeah, so anyways, you know, here for again a good StarCraft 2 team. All right, moving on. We got some news and I guess some more esports news. There's just a lot of stuff going on like late last week. Richard, you broke this news. MLG basically very close to getting bought by Yahoo.
Yeah, I mean, so this is an interesting one because, you know, my sources have told me these talks have been ongoing for a while. And when I broke the story, obviously I reached out to MLG for comment. They didn't have any, perhaps unsurprisingly. But it was kind of the aftermath where a lot of the tweets that sort of came out from Sundance, who obviously I've got a lot of time for, respect for, consider him a friend, were kind of maybe alluding to the fact that the deal perhaps had been derailed or that MLG wasn't really for sale. I'm just going to quickly try and find the tweet now. Yeah, let me...
Did you see the GameSpot article?
No,
I actually didn't. I don't read GameSpot because obviously...
Okay, well, there's a GameSpot article that ends with a source familiar with the matter informs GameSpot that the reports are not true, though they did confirm that MLG and Yahoo held discussions. These talks are no longer progressing.
So hang on, doesn't that...
they claim.
That means the report is true then? Because the report was that they were in talks.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how they word it. That's what they say.
Well, no doubt.
Well,
no doubt
in the article it says it was
95%. Travis informed that article.
Well, I mean, in your article you said it's 95% complete, which is like complete in my eyes. Like when it's that far.
And this is indeed what the sources said. Now, interestingly enough, obviously we all know one of the practices that go on when there's high-level business acquisitions occurring is that people leak stuff to the press deliberately in the hope that a journalist will pick up the crumbs, report it, and actually what they're hoping for is somebody else to come in and kind of gazump the deal at the last minute. And
sure.
People obviously need to remember that Twitch was definitely going to Google, right? 100%. I mean, that was reported in Forbes, Variety, and then of course Amazon came in at the last minute.
I don't know how much of an impact. I mean, that was some big fucking deals going down. $1 billion is a lot of fucking money. I don't know if they were leaking that in the hopes someone else would pick them up. I'm sure that they were talking to multiple people the entire time.
No. I'm not saying necessarily that was what was going on, but certainly, I from my understanding about how that story got out, is that the sources put that out internally, and I think Twitch was a desirable product for a number of people. Actually, I think it was. There were. I think there was even talk about Facebook maybe sniffing around them at some point.
There was.
So it would make sense to certainly hedge your bets. This was a huge acquisition. I mean, Stephen's right in the sense that it probably would have gone to Google if there weren't those antitrust concerns with them owning YouTube as well. It's one of those things. I mean, look, I've always said when I put stuff out there, I try and report it so it's as factually accurate as possible at the time you receive the information. But things can change, and this is one of the downsides to being a leaker, if you like, somebody that someone that takes information that other people don't want out there, and you publicly present it. And you try and be as accurate as you can, but obviously one or two annually are going to slip through the cracks. What I'm confident in saying is that they had multiple talks with Yahoo. Those talks have been or were very productive, and if the deal has gone south and has fallen down, it's a very recent development. But I still wouldn't rule out I still wouldn't rule out it going ahead.
Let's just hypothetically think that, or just think about if Yahoo did end up buying MLG. Good or bad thing? Steven, what do you think for MLG?
I mean, I don't know enough about MLG's platform. Are they the whole MLG streaming thing was kind of like their saving throw, right, to try to get MLG profitable? So I mean, I guess it would probably be good for Sundance and everybody who invested money in MLG if they could finally sell it and get away from it, because that's been like a money losing thing for how many years now.
Well, they were officially like out of the red, right? Like a year ago.
Well, every year they say
no.
I think where they say this year's the first year we're out of the red.
Well, just
no. I don't think it's not making agreement. I don't think they ever said that they were out of the red. I think they said this is the first year we made money.
Yeah. I meant from a profit standpoint.
I thought that was the statement, which is a huge, which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think MLG has always had, like, I don't consider MLG to be a big player in any esports arena aside from, I guess, Call of Duty. They have big streams, right?
Yeah, I mean Smash. They're kind of having big
like Nade Shot and shit or whatever. Like, but aside from like that, I don't think MLG is like a very significant. Like, I don't think anything that happens with MLG site at the moment is going to have any like ground-shattering or earth-shattering, groundbreaking, like rippling effects throughout the rest of the esports world. Just not at the moment. MLG is just not as they just don't wield as much influence as they used to. I don't think.
Matt, what do you think? They have a large, basically influx of, just cash, right? I mean, with having Yahoo back them.
Yeah, I don't really know if anything changes. Maybe they go back to having more events like they used to in 2011, 12.
But not even, because they had to stop those events because they were
losing so much money. They were losing a lot of money per event, right? Yeah.
I'm way more interested.
If anything,
the number the buying number.
Yeah, like what would Yahoo buy them for?
That's two things. Like, one problem would be I don't know how much of this this is all conjecture, right? But like, do you think it would look bad if like MLG sold for like $200 million? Like, because Twitch just sold for $1 billion, and that company's existed in name for maybe
given
6
MLG
years.
is
Even that much, and MLG's existed for how long? If they would have sold for less than Twitch, wouldn't that look really bad? Especially if it was a number significantly less than Twitch. And at the
Twitch
moment,
has,
I
like,
don't.
Well, Twitch has like way more engineers and way more infrastructure too, though, don't they? Like MLG has.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, from like
especially
especially as like now that they're trying to be a competitor, I'm just saying, like, don't you think that would look bad to see MLG, a company that's existed for decades, haven't they? Like they've.
Yeah, but what's the alternative? Not selling for that amount, even though you're
it's negotiating a higher buyout. Not sell for an embarrassingly low amount. Like you sell for like 200 million and you look like a fucking shitter when Twitch has been around for a fifth of the time and is outselling you by so much. And then like they're trying to compete now, right? Because MLG is trying to get on board with the streaming thing, right? That's like that was supposed to be like their saving program, or the thing that was supposed to bring them out of all their financial woes. So I mean, I don't know. I feel like any money they had would probably be invested into that, like getting the infrastructure set up to actually get into the streaming thing more seriously.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody said that 200 million would be a super low evaluation for MLG. What does MLG have these days besides a brand
that's
name?
Not
what
do
they do?
Not clear about, like, with their infrastructure. I mean, they have infrastructure, of course. I mean, just having a streaming platform requires
for what?
For even just their whatever streaming platform they do have. I mean, there has to be some kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, but how scalable is it? Like how many people do they actually stream? Yeah, but how scalable? Like how big is it? Like how many? If they only stream to like I have infrastructure for my website, but only a few thousand people visit it. Like like how many people actually visit MLG's website for streaming? If they never had more than like 10,000 or 20,000 concurrent viewers in the entire site, like how valuable is that infrastructure? Like that's almost worthless,
Well, it's not going to be bought for anything close to Twitch. I mean, it's just not worth as much as Twitch right now. I mean, given even user base or whatever, what I mean? Like Twitch's user base was huge, so that's a large part of the valuation, as well as the technology too. MLG has a little bit of both, and then they have a brand that's obviously been around for a long time too. But it's not gonna be anywhere close to the Twitch buy. I mean, and it shouldn't be. Like, you shouldn't be embarrassed by that.
I think people think about it all wrong. It's like the MTG acquisitions. MTG aren't buying these leagues that they're looking to acquire, and indeed in some cases they're even holding talks with gaming organizations themselves, such as NIP. What they're doing is they're buying what they see as content producers. A league as a content producer, a organization as a content producer, and they want to put them on their on their various platforms, be it online or on television, and reap dividends through broadcasting the content that these properties create. And I'm pretty sure Yahoo would be looking at it with a similar eye. I don't think it's so much about anything beyond that.
Just as a content. Wow, really? Okay.
Mm. I think that's where I think people you have to understand all of the acquisitions that are happening right now at the moment, all of these business discussions, from the Turner League, where I was involved firsthand, or to even some of the big sponsorship deals that are coming in. This isn't about sort of the kind of traditional, I want a logo, I want an association, I want a partnership, I want you to rep me. The kind of acquisitions that are happening now is that we understand there's this huge audience out there for esports, and we want to tap into that so we can bring in actual partners who've never been involved in esports before through us, who they feel safe doing business with, and we get to serve to an audience that we've never been able to reach before. This is why buying somebody that hosts 6 to 8 tournaments a year that you would potentially have the rights to either exclusively broadcast or to sell off the broadcasting rights, or even to give away those broadcasting rights for free, but to put in place your own sponsors, which you've negotiated externally. That's a hugely desirable prospect right now, because we're starting to realize just how big the numbers of esports enthusiasts actually are. That's what all these deals are really focused on right now. From an industry perspective.
Yeah, also in the article that you mentioned that there's plans for CS:GO being a big part of MLG, which they haven't done to this point, if I I don't think. Have
Yeah,
they had
they've done some.
Have they done a little bit? Okay, maybe I just haven't.
Yeah.
Sources
Sources tell me they're making a number of significant hires to this effect, and I'm pretty confident that once this acquisition goes through, be it with Yahoo or whoever else they're currently courting, there will be an announcement to this regards that they're going to double down on CS:GO. Which is great because MLG did a wonderful job at Aspen, at the X Games.
Right.
And I mean, that event was so well run and such a spectacle. I think next year they could even be in line to get a major, given that Valve want to. Yeah, Valve want to diversify and not have the majors run by the same companies, but they also want to diversify geographically. So I'm pretty sure MLG would be a front runner for that. But again, everything hinges on this acquisition. Sounds to me that if they are, doing a bit of vocal pushback on the Yahoo acquisition, that maybe someone else has come in and they are going to announce that they're being bought very very soon. But
okay.
Yeah, like I say, I think you'll see big things from MLG and CS:GO next year. I'm pretty confident about that.
That would be pretty surprising. I don't think so, but we'll see. I don't know.
All right.
I mean, you would think it'd be kind of a natural extension for them, right? Because they already do all the Call of Duty stuff. So like,
saying that CS:GO is a
different
natural
this is.
extension of Call of Duty, I don't know if I feel that's necessarily true. I feel like those communities are pretty different.
I mean, except for the part that Call of Duty is more console based.
They're both FPSs, but the similarities kind of end there, both between the communities. You've got PC gamers versus console gamers, and then you've got two very, very, very different types of games. Like they're both FPS, but I mean in name, like they're very, very different games. Like Call of Duty and CS:GO are insanely different from each other.
I would think,
but I mean, it's possible. I don't know.
I would think production-wise, it would be somewhat similar. Just because, I mean, the games.
Maybe I've never watched Call of Duty Procasting.
Yeah, I mean, they're both realistic shooters, and so I don't know. I think at least production-wise, it would be similar. But yeah, the games are the communities are quite different for sure. All right, next up, let's see. All right, we have some news here with the Nevada Gaming Commission, and kind of big news here. Nevada Gaming Commission bans DraftKings and FanDuel, which are two of the biggest fantasy companies that have received a lot of funding recently, and we're seeing them everywhere at this point, and also entering into the esports space with some big deals. So this is only in Nevada, but Nevada usually dictates what goes, ends up basically going on in the rest, or at least leads the way in terms of what happens from the standpoint of gambling in the rest of the country. You think this is going to have an impact on DraftKings, or at least the growth of DraftKings, and potentially the money that's been coming into esports from DraftKings and FanDuel? Richard, what do you think?
Well, this is a classic example of obviously potentially killing the goose that laid the golden egg, and with the fantasy draft industry has enjoyed a very protected status within American society. Obviously, Americans are very puritanical about gambling. Almost hysterically so, and I mean that on a governance level, not so much on an individual level, where I imagine the populace don't really give two shits and probably engage in casual betting with their friends, and they play poker for money, and all of which is of course, well, state to state it is different, but of course for the most part illegal. Now, one of the ways that the fantasy betting sites have kind of bypassed all of this is that they have been classified as a game of skill rather than a game of chance, and this is a very special classification, which has enabled them to enjoy this protected status legally. Now, with that protected status legally has come all the people who wanted to have a dabble and kind of apply their footballing knowledge to something where they can get a financial return. Instead of placing a sports bet out of bookies, which you would do here in the UK, you pick a fantasy team predicated on that knowledge over the course of a season, and you reap the rewards. Now, where it started to go awry is that there have been a number of activity that would constitute illegality. People, there was some excellent reporting about it recently, I'm just going to quickly try and find an article while I'm talking that I think you guys should probably look at if you have some spare time. But it was basically, we got to a stage where employees of one company, like FanDuel, for example, and would be having this insider knowledge. And then you've got DraftKings employees that obviously have the insider knowledge. They know the numbers and they know the metrics. And they were like going and potentially betting on each other's leagues. Using this insider knowledge and metrics and trends. So all of a sudden, we now get into something that's gone from being recognized as not being a game of chance, but a game of skill, but now a game of skill that can be gamed by people that have access that the general populace don't. And once you get into that territory, of course, it makes the American government very knee-jerky. They react to it, and they want to stamp it down. So after some fine reporting from the sports writer at the New York Times, Joe Drape, who's won numerous awards. He's brought this story about how the Nevada Commission are going to now start treating fantasy sports sites as gambling. Now, of course, this is just the Nevada regulators, but it's worth noting that the Nevada regulators, of course, is where we have legalized gambling. Anyway, so and a lot of sports events are run there through the in that state. So the question is now, will this reclassification proliferate through the rest of the country? And if it does, then it's certainly going to impact on the amount of money that DraftKings and FanDuel and companies like this are going to have to invest in regulating themselves, keeping themselves in check with the government mandates and what states they can and can't be featured in. It would certainly potentially harm any global endorsements, such as having their logos come up every 2 minutes on a typical NFL broadcast. Yeah. And all of this, of course, impacts on their overall profitability, which would in turn cut their marketing budgets. So while it isn't catastrophic in any real sense at the moment, the reality is that this does have the potential to erode how much money they can suddenly dump into esports, and it's something that we should monitor very closely.
Steven, thoughts?
I was arguing with a guy in my chat who's being a fucking retard. I really don't even know what the fuck is going on right now. So, about the DraftKings thing or whatever, I agree with everything Richard Lewis said. Sorry. That's all I got.
Thanks, Steven. I knew that was going to
happen. Some guy got really fucking mad at my chat that I said, differences between Call of Duty and CSGO, but doesn't even know any of the differences. I don't know. I'm just getting really rustled. Sorry, go ahead.
Right, Matt.
Apparently,
Matt,
we need
thoughts.
to talk about every single difference between CSGO and
the thing about it
or
being like not classified as gambling just means that it escapes all those regulation bodies, even though it's basically gambling. And so it's like this golden frontier for them. So I think that's why they were dumping in, billions and billions of dollars. Of course.
Yeah.
And so like for my everyday life, I can't even escape DraftKings ads. Like in Minneapolis, they have mobile billboards that drive around that just have the fucking DraftKings logo on them.
Well,
they're not even like regular trucks. They're just mobile billboards that drive around the city with these stupid logos.
Those are the original mobile advertising, right? Where these they're basically trucks with flipping little billboards on the side.
Because of that dude, like that story blew up of that dude that won $350K on FanDuel, even though he's like a manager at DraftKings. Like they brought in the FBI to investigate this stuff now because they think it's like insider trading and they want to look into this stuff. So I think that whole thing's gonna come crashing down way sooner than we thought. Like I think we all knew that there was a future between 3 and 5 years from now, and it's not going to be like this because it's going to be regulated like other forms of gambling are. But instead, it looks like it's going to happen like really, really soon.
Yeah.
So DraftKings, is this just like fantasy football stuff?
It is. Yeah, it's like a daily. So like the Magic or the.
And you make money off of it?
Well, the kind of revenue model.
Right?
Yeah, the revenue model right now is like basically daily fantasy type of things, where each day you pay a certain amount, you enter into this like giant pool of people that are basically picking players each day or each Sunday. Depends on where you're playing. Like football, it'd be like each Sunday or each week you pick a lineup of players, and then whoever does the best, rotisserie wise, ends up winning X amount of money depending on where you end up. And that's kind of like the new revenue thing. This kind of daily lineup type of fantasy, more so than like a seasonal lineup. Like you play with your friends, right? You probably pick a team and you play the whole season. This thing is more day to day type of thing. Yeah, and they make a ton of money on it, like for sure. But the amount of funding that they've gotten recently and spending all that on marketing. That's why you see it everywhere, Matt. It's because they spend half of the funding on just pure marketing.
ESPN gave DraftKings like $400 million
Yeah.
to spend throughout 2015 or something. Like, just unreal.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of effects we get.
Here it is. I think this is this the article that I want? Yeah, this is really good. You guys just read this in your spare time. It's the New York Times article that came just prior to the announcement. It's written by multiple journalists. It's a real big investigation. It's like one of the best things I've read in the New York Times for a while. Here you go. In a narrow doorway on Fifth Street, a short cab ride from the brand name store selling luxury and cachet to the wealthy, a man with a street name, Mr. Gold, handed a shopping bag to a woman in casual clothes. The bag contained $350,000 in cash, proceeds from an illegal internet gambling ring. And this is all about fantasy sports betting, and it's called Cash Drops and Keystrokes, the dark reality of sports betting and daily fantasy games. It's a really, really, really good read. I would urge anyone to read that if you're
SC2
interested
or something, man. Oh my god. Okay.
So yeah, it's just.
So far the reality stuff that sports betting or whatever, or I guess it's not. I guess betting has evaded all sorts of regulation. Yeah, the fantasy stuff it's not regulated at all by gambling commission or anything.
As far as I understand, yeah, that might be. Someone should probably clarify that, but it escapes the normal regulation that like gambling is very strictly controlled, right, between states
and
on
the United
internet.
States,
yeah,
because it's a game of skill, right?
Fantasy escapes almost all of that. Yeah.
If it's deemed a game of skill, then it's more of like event type of regulation versus gambling regulation, which is a lot heavier.
Right, it's more like a contest.
Contest event type of thing. Yeah, which is pretty easy to navigate through. It doesn't cost much either. I don't think it costs anything actually. You just have to make sure that you abide by certain rules.
Right, there's not like a regulatory body that oversees all of this.
Yeah,
you don't need a license or anything like that.
Wait, there's not a regulatory body that. Is that what you just said?
For contests, no.
Yeah, that's the reality.
But for gambling, there is.
Yeah, right? Gambling there is.
Yeah,
you have to get licensed.
But that's what I mean. This is obviously operating outside of that. That's
right, exactly. This operates outside that umbrella.
Yeah, until recently, or at least with Nevada, right?
Well, I mean, Nevada are obviously
right,
changing it, but who knows? It might not go countrywide. It might be one of those curious things that are specific to one state. But ultimately, I have a feeling that the investigation, it will be ongoing, and more and more corruption is going to come tumbling out, because this is what happens with any unregulated business or industry.
Yeah.
What people utilize it to maximize gains. It ties into what we were talking about right at the top of the show.
Yeah.
I imagine there's going to be loads of negative headlines for both companies coming out.
Right, so it's huge in the media now. So now there's like tons of pressure from the government to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Next up, another thing that happened last week was we did get to see. I know we talked a little bit about that Overwatch last week, but we did get to see a preview of the beta. Elohim was one of the streamers. Elohim and Haley Nick, I think, were the two streamers that were chosen by Blizzard to actually show the community or everybody Overwatch beta, or the state of Overwatch beta, and they also announced that the beta is coming out on a week from today, actually. So did you guys get a chance to check it out? It was probably like a 3 or 4 hour stream, I believe. Any of you guys see it, Steven?
Nope. Didn't watch any of it.
None of you guys watched it? Oh my god. Okay. Richard,
my whole thing with Overwatch is like, I'm just gonna wait until I can play the beta because I want it to be surprising. So I know like very little about it.
I mean, that's pretty much, I've looked at a few of the videos. I can't say I'm particularly overwhelmed by the game. It looks very much like another by the numbers class-based FPS. And I've been involved. I've seen a few of those come and go, and been involved actively with a few, like Team Fortress 2. So I'm not really. Yeah, well, what I've seen hasn't blown me away. But like Matt, I think I want to wait, get my hands on the beta, and see how it.
Are you guys gonna get it in the first wave?
Oh, well,
so.
it's interesting.
I'll
I mean,
try
that
my
was
hardest
that was one of the kind of not a controversy, but a few people were flapping their gums about it. That were the beta keys only going to go out to like dedicated streamers or something?
Yeah,
Was that like,
it's definitely way more tight than any other Blizzard title has been. So
That's because the demand for it's so much higher.
well, the demand is higher, but I think
Everyone's like losing their shit over this game.
well, they're also choosing, like, before it was more, I think it was more like there was a list of people associated with Blizzard titles, right? Whether you're a content producer or you're a team owner or you're just a player or whatever, right? And I think probably all of us have been typically on those lists. But with this one, I think they're strategically it was different. They're targeting, I think, even the community members in Team Fortress too, and even CS:GO to some extent, and obviously just huge content producers in YouTube and as well as Twitch. So I think it's different. It's definitely different this time around. I don't know if I'm going to get one. I actually don't necessarily expect to get one, quite honestly. But do you guys actually expect to get one, or do you even know if you're going to be?
Blizzard inexplicably sent me a beta key for was it Heroes of the Storm and Heart of the Swarm. So I've been getting beta keys from them.
Yeah.
For games that I just don't simply have the time to play. I imagine I probably my goose might be cooked. I imagine I won't get one for Overwatch, which I would actually play that.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I know Anders, the CS caster.
Yeah, he went recently.
Capacity, so that'll be interesting. Hopefully neither developer are going to try and have a battle for exclusivity of the Anders brand.
The Anders brand. I think
it would be tragic if that were to happen.
I think
see some bidding wars.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean,
I think CS:GO's fine.
some companies have gone that way and wanted to control kind of the talent that commentates on the game because they know the community. Once you're dubbed the voice of the community, obviously you're a very important bargaining chip to keeping the community on side. So yeah, I'm sure Blizzard would love him to commentate on Overwatch, and I'm sure Anders would like to flex his muscles and expand into new games as he grows as a commentator. So hopefully that doesn't cause any political problems. This being esports, I won't hold my breath, but hopefully it's a relatively painless process.
Yeah, I hope I get one though. It looks really fun. I'd love to get a chance to play on day one. All right, next up, Richard. So you mentioned like a few weeks ago that you were going to start publishing on a website that we'd all be surprised about, or some of us would be surprised about. And I think everybody knows at this point that you're publishing articles on Breitbart at this point, and which is, I think, is surprising to people because Breitbart is usually regarded as a quote unquote right wing type of website, and I don't think people view you as a right-wing type of personality. So want to talk just a little bit about that?
He's our own little esports Piers Morgan, I guess. Huh?
Oh, God. Oh, God. I certainly hope that's not true. Although it must be said, Piers Morgan was hugely successful.
Yes,
and
he
was the youngest ever editor of a mainstream publication in
Please
the
don't
UK.
become Piers Morgan.
I
was just joking
which he did in his early 20s, a record that still stands to this day. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, look, I was in talks with several people, and I've been offered lots of jobs. And I wanted to get away from. There is a very progressive bias in the tech media at the moment, which you have to buy into a particular narrative, and your articles need to be about they need to be framed in a particular context, or you're simply not going to go to print. And I found this on a few occasions with the Daily Dot, which of course is a very progressive publication. For example. The head of their entire editorial output, all their opinion pieces, is a chap called Nico Lang, who has been frequently published on Salon, which I'm convinced Salon is a parody website, actually funded by the right to make the left look absurd. It's the only explanation for how ridiculous it is.
Okay.
But anyway, so I encountered numerous problems with sort of not just censorship, but it was also sort of infecting my work with lines and words and information and phrases I didn't want in there. So whenever I wrote about Reddit, for example, and mentioned Gamergate, in one article, an editor altered my article to be Gamergate, a anti-feminist movement known for attacking women, end quote, or words to that effect. Now, I didn't write that.
You were here for the show we did where I brought up the where there was that, I don't remember if this is on Unfiltered or the late game, where there's a difference between what the Gamergate article used to look like on Wikipedia versus what it looks like now. Did you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Now they're trying to label Gamergate a terrorist movement. And it has really degenerated to the levels of absurdity. The thing you've got to remember, of course, about social justice is that you can't expect anybody that embodies social justice as an ideology. You can't expect them to be honest. In fact, they have to be inherently dishonest. The clue is in the ideology's name. They believe that justice isn't being meted out. And therefore they need to be the arbiters of that said justice, and therefore they need to abuse whatever positions, powers, privileges, or statuses they have to ensure that justice is meted out. That is what a social justice warrior does, and that is why this.
I don't know if I agree that a social justice warrior necessarily has to be dishonest. I don't think I necessarily agree with that.
I've yet to see. I would struggle to think of examples of an entirely honest one, be it intellectual or otherwise, because I can point to numerous examples of them distorting the facts to suit a narrative, which is indeed why Gamergate exists to the sort of potency that it does now. It's because of the fact that they have tried to subvert it into something it never was and never will be. And this is part of a wider problem. It's not just tech media and the internet. It's happening in campuses. Me and Stephen have referenced that article, the coddling of the American mind, and talking about how campuses are becoming safe spaces. Now, as someone who's always proudly been liberal, proudly been left-wing, and somebody that's supported the need for political correctness as a consensus to be inclusive and encourage diversity, if I had known that political correctness would have given birth to safe space culture, I would have completely revised my outlook. I wouldn't have supported it at all, because we've now entered into a new territory where it's the liberals and the leftists have allowed identity politics to completely destroy their movement, and they're the people that are now censoring us. They're the people that are now eroding free speech and free speech values, not the right. So this kind of new cultural framework for me meant that I wanted to be somewhere where I feel I can effectively be bulletproof.
Right.
I don't want to have my work to be censored because it might offend people's feelings or sensibilities, which are inherently absurd and they won't even be relevant in 15 years. We'll look back on the sort of social justice warrior movement and the Tumblr movement and these SRS feminists, and we will laugh at them in 15 years. We will find it quite a curious subculture that has risen up, and it will serve absolutely no purpose besides a minor trivial annoyance for the next decade or so. There will be one or two generations that are going to be particularly hit by this. People at university right now, where we've now got a stage where men are having to go to consent classes to learn why rape is bad. Particularly male sports teams, that's happening now, because obviously we're all default rapists as men. And this is actually an attitude that is being peddled by universities. So when you put it all together, how do I pick a side in all of this? Do I stay with my traditional left, a group that is increasingly bizarre, increasingly censorious, defending pedophiles and God knows what else? Do I stick with the devil I know, or do I try something new? Now, Breitbart as a publication, it stands for a lot of things that I cannot endorse. I certainly can't endorse sort of any race baiting in a political spectrum. I don't stand for that. I don't want Donald Trump to be president. I don't want a Republican at all to be president. They're not my party. But
because you hate black people and Ben Carson? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, but equally, I can see the inherent absurdity in attacking Ben Carson for what he said. So I like to think of myself as very sort of in the middle on all of this. In regards to Andrew Breitbart, which is, I've already had long-standing fans message me and tell me I'm a neo-Nazi, or that I've completely sold out all of my... No, this is absolutely true. That I've absolutely sold out all my journalists.
It's absolutely true that you're a neo-Nazi? Confirmed on Unfiltered?
No, it is absolutely true that this has been alleged.
Oh.
I know. Nice. Imagine my surprise. A lot of people have said, because you're writing for a website that is named after somebody that dabbled in some very questionable journalism in the form of, was it Shirley Sherrod, where they doctored a video, or rather didn't doctor it, but didn't show it contextually, so it made her look like a racist, but in actual fact she was saying the exact opposite. People have said, you've completely sold out. Well, and that you're obviously not principled. Well, here's what I will say. First of all, Andrew Breitbart has passed away and died in 2012. Second of all, Breitbart has contributed numerous articles of worth, especially within the tech sector, where they're the only people that have really covered the whole Gamergate issue with any sort of deviation from this social justice warrior narrative. And that to me is hugely important, to be affiliated with people like that. Great speakers like Alan Bakari, who himself is a liberal Democrat. He talks very regularly around the UK. He was at the Battle of Ideas with me this weekend just past. And of course, Milo Yiannopoulos, who in 2013 was labeled the pit bull of the tech journalist world. So these are people that I'm proud to call peers. If this makes me a bad person to be at this publication, then I guess I'm just going to have to live with it and cry myself to sleep on my bed made of sweet, sweet Republican money.
All right. Well, I just wanted to at least, have you kind of talk a little bit about it. You've talked a lot about it on your.
It won't change. It won't change the work that I do. The work that I do will always be the same. I will always hold myself up to the same standard, and I will not allow any politics of the publication I work for to inform what I write. And this happened at the Daily Dot, like I said, and I received all of the same criticisms when I joined the Daily Dot 18 months ago, 19 months ago, whatever it was, when people said to me, that is a social justice warrior rag, you're selling out gamers, they're terrible, look, 50% of the articles that are on there are cat videos, what the fuck is wrong with you? I had all of the criticisms then. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's just the nature of the business we're in. And do I believe Breitbart will be my final destination, my resting place? Probably not. I think I'll probably be working somewhere else in the future. But for now, I'm definitely proud to call it my home and work with the people that write there.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, let's actually get into some Q&A. I don't have a ton of time left, so I want to make sure we get to the questions here. So thanks everybody for writing questions or even tweeting me some of the questions. There's a lot of tweets today too. Gage Bond has one for Stevens. Since team games have been dominating digital sports the past few years, with most of the 1v1 games dying off, do you think Blizzard should look into trying to push 2v2 as a thing in StarCraft with maps that don't suck? Balance changes specifically for the mode? I think it was an MLG that was sort of a joke 2v2 tournament, but with all the top players, and it was the most hype and fun I'd had watching SC2 since the early Wings of Liberty Code S finals, even with 2v2 being extremely imbalanced at the time. Or do you think putting that whole team experience idea into practice with Overwatch and Heroes and basically giving up on SC2 aside from the 3 guys on the current team? Not sure about the whole thing, but basically, what do you think of team? Do you think StarCraft 2 should approach the team type of formatting or the team structure more so than having it be 1v1?
I mean
Archon mode's something
I guess
too,
like
right? It's like
yeah, Archon mode would be the closest. Like if you want to get, this is a conversation that you could talk a lot about. The biggest problem is the game's not balanced for 2v2. So like, would 2v2 ever actually be, like an exciting, viable game mode? It's kind of hard to say. I don't think StarCraft 2 plays out as interestingly as a team game as like a MOBA or an FPS does. I don't know. I don't feel like that's the way. I don't feel like there's like a huge future there. Like if StarCraft was suddenly played as like a 2v2, like all of a sudden it's gonna be so hype and shit.
Well, their way around it is the
scale well
Archon.
into teams.
Well, their way around it is the Archon.
Yeah,
right?
that's kind of
because it's 1v1.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
it's-
Archon mode would be the only, but even that, I don't know if that is ever gonna gain any traction. Like,
So
I
Matt,
mean,
you're
Archon
saying
mode-
if it did, that'd be-
Well, so the thing is like for CS:GO or for Call of Duty or whatever, like the game scales really well and having multiple people, because then like the maps get bigger and the game gets crazier and there's more interesting dynamics that happen. That doesn't really happen when you scale StarCraft, because StarCraft as it is, you're already like taking half the map anyway. Like it just doesn't change that dynamic. And the beauty of StarCraft in a lot of ways is that it's a very like mano-a-mano thing. And Archon mode does some of that, but Archon mode, as far as the tournament format goes, is not that great, because viewing it is almost exactly the same as watching like a regular player. There's not a lot you gain there.
Well, I'll
So I
throw
don't
in.
think-
Yeah, maybe the scalability thing is the thing there, where like there's not like a bunch of unit interactions that make it like very interesting. Like in CS:GO, different
Right, it
people
doesn't-
cover different spots, or in MOBAs, you know, like you've got, you know, all the heroes and the champions or whatever the fuck you call them, you know, all kind of work together and as a team. But like in StarCraft 2, you both have your armies and you kind of both attack, and there's not very much interaction there between like working as a team.
I mean, one thing you could.
It doesn't really improve diversity that much. It does a little bit, but not nearly as much as any other game, right?
Well, you're talking about the contents of the game, like just having multiple copies of each of the well, it's different from Archon mode, right? Archon mode, you actually in theory have teams because you have multiple people working on like a single base in the game. Like the game itself is 1v1, right? But you actually have two people working on a single base. I think you could get. Do you think that matters? I guess that's the question. Do you think that having multiple players actually controlling a single base is considered like a team game to, or does it affect like whether it'd be more accessible to people as a team game?
The problem is that
does it have to be the content of the game?
Not really that much. There's not that much to do like for Archon mode, like, and this isn't even like even in Brood War. Like if it was a game where you could spend like a lot of time like building defensive structures, or like a lot of time like dedicated to doing a certain thing, then maybe like in StarCraft and Archon mode, like one person's macroing, it's like making drones and shit. It's not like there's a ton of input that a second player is going to provide to make it like a unique experience. Like I guess like the way that I would say it is like in a game. In a game like StarCraft 2, could you really tell the difference if you're watching an Archon mode game versus just a one player that's really good? Like you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. Like it would just look like one player playing, and there's not any like huge tell. There's not any kind of things that go on in Archon mode that are like, oh man, this is definitely like a two-player experience. Like two people are playing, I could tell. It's so obvious, you know.
Well, you can't because you already.
Exactly. That's one of my problems.
Well, you already have that. The problem is that we already have just the whole 1v1 kind of ingrained in our head, and we view StarCraft 2 like that. But let's just say as a new person that's never seen StarCraft 2 before, and they come and their first interaction with StarCraft 2 is Archon mode. So it is the experience of.
I think it helps accessibility that way. I think it's actually really good for that.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the maps bigger. You can make the maps
to
bigger.
The pro scene and stuff, like,
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the answer to the question is that it's not viable. I mean, for you guys, you don't think they should put any focus on it.
It's not going to be like some saving grace that all of a sudden makes StarCraft 2
well,
like
of course
the
not.
successful esport that we always wanted to be or something.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of what the question
Like
was getting
IPL.
at. Is it like,
Okay.
like what?
right? That's a bad joke.
All right. Massiage Spraka asks, there have been a lot of horrible esports events this year. Do you think it will influence new esport events organizations that want to be to do tournaments? As in, the teams won't want to risk taking part in another esports paradise or world championships in countries like Serbia and Slovenia, etc., because they got screwed. The experience was horrible, and they don't think they will get paid. Did the gaming paradise pay out the teams? I guess this is for you.
It hasn't as of yet. In fact, one of the articles I'm working on at the moment is I actually sat down with the chap who ran Gamers Paradise. Quite interestingly enough, how this interview came about was he added another journalist I know whose name is Toby W. and he thought it was Toby 1, the caster.
Right.
And then he had, this is how inept
Right.
this individual is. And then he had to try and style it out. Like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I'd love to do an interview, probably. Journalists like that, right? And then the journalist kind of deferred him to me. Now, just to let you know, this chap goes under the, and I'm probably not doxing him doing this, but he goes under, this is what raised alarm bells. He goes under the handle John Smith. Which of course is the most common.
That's a dox. That's a ban
in the UK. And I'm like, well, why is this true? Because of course his real name is Sasa Bulic, and again, I'm not doxing him. He's put his real name out there. It's on all the Gaming Paradise stuff. So I sat down and had a lengthy chat with him about the event, and it's just a roller coaster ride of ineptitude. It's hilarious, from start to rotten finish. And they haven't paid the money out yet.
Yeah.
And when I asked him. Yeah, when I asked him about how the money was going to get paid out, he said, well, we've got plans in place. And I said, well, what plans are these? And he said, well, I can't tell you.
Raise money.
So, I mean, now
I have to get a bunch of credit cards.
Yeah, now I've never heard this before in my decade of esports. So you can imagine. I can't wait to write this up because it's so funny. It just, the thing is, I actually have very little problem with. Okay, let's say I'm trying to think of the best way to frame it. Let's say you are inept. Okay, let's say you are inept, and you come into this business and you're like, your shield when it all goes wrong is I just didn't know what I was doing. I was out of my depth. Well, you're just as harmful as somebody that comes into the scene and wants to rip everybody off. So fuck you all the same, I think. And I don't think we say this enough in esports. That if somebody clearly isn't cut out for a job and they do it so badly that it negatively impacts dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of people, and it costs people money and stress, and we should be saying to these people, fuck you, that there shouldn't really be a second chance, I think, when it comes to an event that was so terribly handled as Paradise was. He's optimistic. I mean, he thinks there'll be a second chance for him. He thinks he'll run another event. And God forbid, God forbid that happens. Like he said, in fact, hang on, let me just bring up the exact quote, because I'm sure it'll make you chuckle. Where was it?
Cringe.
No, it is.
We laugh in the United States, Richard. We don't chuckle here.
Okay,
We
so
cringe.
I apologize. Where was it? Hang on. If someone else wants to chime in with a point while I'm just sort of looking for this, I might be.
I don't remember the original question anymore.
It was, what do we think about people running
I mean,
these
haven't we
terrible
gotten over
events?
like these events not paying people? I mean, golly.
No, like the bigger it gets, the more these people we're gonna get, because it's more people are gonna flock to it and be like, oh, I can do that. There's money in this.
Well, yeah. Obviously, what we call chances, and there's that guy, isn't there? That Mayhem. Oh wow, this guy is such a fucking. I mean,
There's the esport game guy.
Yeah,
what's Mayhem guy?
Yeah, esports mayhem. That's it. This guy.
Oh,
came out this week,
sports
2 weeks
mayhem. Oh shit.
No.
That was the topic on
Chris,
itself.
use your production value.
That's esports in itself.
You just please use your production value to bring this chap up on Twitter, because the Daily Dot actually did a wonderful article on him. Let me just bring that up as well.
And that logo is so good.
Yeah.
The skull.
So
It's very like 1998 clip art.
Ferg Mitchell,
Alright,
a former
fine.
colleague of mine, a very underrated esports journalist, wrote this article about how the esports mayhem chap was going to just host the esports world finals. I mean, that's what he was calling it, the world finals of esports, not a game, all of esports. And this is, of course, where the famous meme has come from, do you esport game, which was his original tweet when he arrived. Now, the chap that runs this is a guy called Jake Jacobson. and he's run successful businesses without any without any problems. You know, like none of them to do with gaming before. But he's ran record companies, for example, and numerous other things. And he now has his eyes on esports, but he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Now, the reason there is media not displayed at the top of his Twitter page is just yesterday, Bart from High Res tweeted that he was illegally using a Smite graphic. And he subsequently removed it. He's also not very quick on Twitter because when he first came out, I said, I have a question for you. Did you lose your mind suddenly?
Yeah, I saw that.
Or was it a slow, gradual process? He replied to that yesterday saying, why do you ask me if I've lost my mind? Well, I think the evidence is here for all to see that it's a very valid question. And I'm laughing while I'm saying it. I'm trying not to be flippant. This does have all the hallmarks of some sort of breakdown, ultimately. There is... no, seriously. If you look at the website, which is terrible, it's slightly better than...
Let me see.
Yeah, it's slightly better than the stuff you used to see in 1998. Back when we were all using Alta Vista or whatever. This is
looks like Destiny.gg, man. What is this?
Whoa!
That's a bit rough, dude.
I'm just saying it's got gray.
Chris with the burns, man.
You know.
What the fuck is
Which
that?
website? Hold on, wait. Link this website. What the fuck website are you talking about? Link it.
So-
Link it. You think it's a fucking joke? Link it.
Esportsmayhem.com.
Esportsmayhem.com.
So anyway,
Has a stretched image as the banner.
yeah, which is always nice. That's new, actually. There was something that wasn't there yet.
This looks like my site. Chris, kill yourself. What the fuck?
Just
Yeah, I
fucking
know. It's
kidding
unreal
me.
that he would even say that, dude.
Good
That's like so
God. I
bad.
was just saying,
But anyway,
we've got
so
gray
so
and
this is a thing now. This is happening, and this is like he's even had to tweet. I'll read you again. For clarification, Esports Mayhem, he misspelled his own website, is a tournament organizer.
It might not be a misspelling. He's so excited about esports. It's
Yeah.
just esporting all over.
I want to say, if we can
It's the
make
name of
a
his porn
porn,
company.
if we can make a porn website with esports celebrity lookalikes on it called Esports, I think we've made a fortune there. I already scripted a esports themed porn movie called Clan Bang. I did this quite a while ago. I've never been able to get it up and running. The sequel is Land Bang with the tagline. They said you said they could only do it online. I've got it all planned, but we've never
Wow.
realized that dream. But anyway, so
Ready, whenever. If you need casting actors, or whatever, I'll sign up, dude. I'm
well,
ready for that
I've
shit.
already seen
Go.
your penis, and I have to reject you on that ground, Steve.
Pretty harsh.
So anyway, Esports Mayhem is a tournament organizer, and we do not license any games. It's up to gamers to obtain licenses. Can anyone explain to me what the fuck he's rambling about? Please, I'd really like to know.
On
This is
Twitter?
one of those things where
This
I
is-
read like a paragraph of it and my eyes just roll back in my head. It's like,
Exactly.
okay, what's going on here?
All right, getting back to I guess the main question.
Oh yeah. So ultimately, what we need to happen, and I'll end. I've somewhat led this segment. We need to just have the players bandy together and basically say we're not going to go to these events anymore, whether our organizations want to send us or not. We withdraw our labor. We're not going to go and compete at these events because what increasingly is happening is an event is being run, and it's terrible, and it's the players that feel that most acutely. It's the players that don't get the prize money. It's the players that have to deal with the fucking 5 people in one room in a hotel because they promised there was going to be hotels and there wasn't, and they have to eat the shit food and they have to play on the shit desk. It's always the players. But so a tournament organizer and a team organization, an esports organization, very often they'll be like, hey, look, we know we fucked up the first time, but if you come to the second one, we'll totally invite you, and it's got this huge prize money, and we're definitely going to pay you, by the way, and it's all going to be good. And can you just say that we at least tried or something, so we can maybe get some sponsors for the next one? And team esports organizations kind of do secretly kind of have these agreements in place. Yes, we will send our teams to the next one. So it's absolutely got to be player driven. The players just need to say, do you know what? No, fuck you. I don't have to attend that event. There's nothing in my contract that says I specifically have to attend that event. we're not going to attend that event in future. So that's what needs.
Okay, one more question, and then we gotta have to cut it. Okay, this is a pretty good one, but it's 5 minutes, all right, and I can't go over 5 minutes. I gotta go pick up some people.
Okay.
Last question. Hey guys, was wondering if you could.
It's gonna be amazing.
Was wondering if you could comment on our Dota 2, our Master Race, our Cynical Bird. The creator of TakeThisTB.com and Moonduck Studios come together to host a Dota 2 Cancer Research Charity Tournament, November 6th or 7th. If you want some general information, you can check it here. Wanted to know your guys' thoughts on this and what they think about community-based events in general compared to professionally done ones. Also, can you guys give your comments on amateur esports in relation to professional esports? Okay, so let's talk about, I guess, events.
This is kind of like
this
is something that this is really hard to talk about without Total Biscuit himself being here and chiming in. But like, oh man, this is so. Some of this might sound like really fucking rude, but I guess like, hey, hang with me. So like, there are a lot of people that become known because they have cancer, or like just it's like a random person and then they get cancer and then that's their fight, and they're kind of like their whole life and existence becomes about that. Like, oh, like, you know, like this little guy fought cancer. What else did he do? I mean, he's a hero. He fought cancer. Like, the fuck? Has he got a fucking disease? Like, the fuck? Like, I mean, not to like knock people to go through it or whatever, but I mean, it's just that's kind of how it works with some people.
Sure.
Yeah, like it's like the defining point of their life. Total Biscuit has got a lot of achievements, and he's like the #1 fucking game critiquer guy, isn't he? Is there anybody that's bigger that does what he does? I guess maybe, I don't know, like Angry Joe or whatever. I don't know what the size of these guys are compared to Total, but he's very fucking large, and he's built a whole bunch of shit all on its own. His impact can be felt in every part of the StarCraft 2 community, right? He has a team. He's done tournaments in the past, very large and influential tournaments. Total Biscuit has just been involved with and done so much like really awesome shit, and throughout it all, like, has been like, I mean, like, I think everybody here would agree, and not even to dick ride him, like, has been like one of the good guys, right? He's been one of the guys that for the most part tends to stand up for the consumer. I can't think of any time Total Biscuit has been involved in anything where he's been taking money to kind of fuck people over. Like if you go back and you just list that everything that Total Biscuit has done, he's been like an overwhelmingly positive figure in pretty much every scene that I can think of that he's been involved in, and even scenes that he hasn't been involved in, standing up for people with the bullshit DMCA stuff, companies. Like, he's done so much shit that I mean, to some extent, like, I do think that we should be respectful of the fact that he has cancer. When I see a whole bunch of like Total Biscuit cancer tournaments, oh, Total Biscuit is cancer, blah blah blah, like, the fact that that's become like such a huge thing, and then combined with Jenna's tweet where she's like, if you see us at an event, can you like not bring up the cancer? Like, I don't know, that makes me uncomfortable that all of a sudden like everybody's going to turn on to like, oh, the Total Biscuit cancer, he's got cancer, and cancer, that's like the new like defining part of what he's done. Does that make sense, I guess, in what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about it earlier. It's so reductive, and it speaks volumes about the people that want to do that. You know, I can't understand or respect anybody that's kind of. You know.
Well, I mean, you can understand it. I can understand it.
Like,
even if people don't. I don't think a lot of people are doing it maliciously. Like, they're trying to show like respect and all that. And I agree with that. Or maybe I'm less cynical than Richard Lewis. It's like, I think a lot of people like genuinely like enjoy Total Biscuit stuff. But I feel like, and again, like, I'm speaking so to place, because Total Biscuit might have a totally different opinion on this, right? And he might say like, oh, fuck off, like, I want, you know, or whatever. But like, I just like, Total Biscuit has been involved with so much that like I don't want to see everything on the internet that has to do with Total Biscuit. It's not like Total Biscuit is cancer, so now we're doing this, and Total Biscuit is cancer, so now we're doing this. It's like, fuck, like, Total Biscuit's done so much shit that his whole life doesn't need to be about this.
I mean, he needs to be commended for being so transparent about it as well. And I wonder if based on the reactions and people being so reductive about it and only talking about the illness, whether he regrets that decision. I think if I was in his shoes, I certainly would want to, you know, withdraw that decision if I could, to be so transparent about it, because as Steven says, it's all people are talking about now, and that's hugely insulting, frankly.
Well, I think it's harder to hide that type of thing from people.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when it's reached the point it's at, I think it kind of has to say something.
Shit, sorry.
Jesus fuck, Chris. What the fuck? The level of professionalism on this show has just been exceedingly disappointing every fucking time I come on to here. Christ, fuck, man. I can't even focus on my Minecraft game with your fucking cell phone and shit going off all the time. It's fucking ridiculous. I'm almost falling into some fucking lava. Jesus Christ.
All right, so Okay. So here's the thing about this whole charity thing, because to be honest with you, it kind of put me over the edge for me to actually consider organizing actually a charity event. And it's not going to be like TB's charity event. It's going to be an ACS charity event, but there's multiple reasons for me to do it. It's just TB just happens to be the thing that puts me over the edge to do it. And my mom's a 2-time survivor. I have a really good friend right now who has terminal cancer that that lives really close, and I do things and support help their family like every week. So there are a lot of reasons for me to do it. I just never had time to really try to organize the event, but TB doing it, I feel like the event itself could, I think it would make sense having it kind of like what I was thinking about, guys, is like a Hearthstone tournament, and TB is known for like gimmicky kind of decks and stuff like that. I might just do a tournament that's like that. That would basically be a charitable event. All the events that are like, in honor of him and stuff, I totally like, yeah, you shouldn't, the guy's not dead, like definitely don't do that. But I have no issues, and myself, I'm like inspired to do an event that raises money for a cause, a cause that happens to be in line with, what John is suffering from now. So I'm not against it. I know what you mean though. There's some people that are doing it, just to get attention and stuff like that.
Like I can understand, and again, to not be like a cynical as Richard List, is like, yeah, but like I can understand for the people that aren't like, I believe that there are genuinely good people out there that don't want to do it for attention. It's one of those things where like when you read something like this, like you want to do something but you can't do anything, so you do what you can. And for some people that might be like I could see like a lot of fans trying to get on board with like a tournament of some sort, of raising money for a tournament, not necessarily because people are attention whoring, or even like fans just want to throw money because they're retarded, but just because it's like when like Total Biscuit is a well-loved community figure in almost every fucking gaming community he's been involved in. So I mean, like there is that desire to like, when something like that happens, you want to do what you can, even if it's not much or even if it's not really anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I can understand people's desires to get involved with something.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about this because I was kind of, this weekend I was really just looking into logistics of doing it. I think I will do one for sure, because I've been wanting to do a charity event for a while. It's just, it'll probably be in December, like probably early December, not anytime soon. Like this whole Dota 2 thing's happening like next week or so, I don't know, during BlizzCon or something like that. So I don't know what they're doing with that, but it has nothing to do with that anyways. So but I do want to do something, and then it happens to be partially inspired by TB2, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I mean, I won't be marketing as the TB Save TB from Cancer type of tournament or anything like that. So, but I did want to do at least a Hearthstone tournament for those that are wondering if because I'd mentioned it to a few people before.
I'm not so cynical that I would see it as a bad thing that people use something in your life, to then be like, oh yeah, this is an issue, and we should raise awareness about it. We should try and raise some money to maybe do something positive about that. I definitely don't have a problem with it. I did streams, for example, where during the height of the Ebola crisis, I was telling my viewers and all of that to give the money to Doctors Without Borders.
Right.
So I'm not that embittered and cynical. To Stephen's point, but I definitely think we should, think carefully about some of the motivations, because I remember, for example, I think it was after the Promise incident in League of Legends. Where obviously after the betting scandal, match fixing scandal, and he threw himself off a building, and there was numerous people who were going and streaming and being like, "Oh, I'm raising money and awareness for like suicide charities and stuff," and it felt like really contrite.
Oh God, the Voyboy streams. Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, I wasn't including Voyboy actually. I don't even think Voyboy was. I think his suicide awareness stream was nothing to do with Promise. I think that came much later.
Yeah, that was different.
But
was it? I don't know. I think I remember.
Yeah, I don't think you can lump.
They weren't connected, dude.
But
I don't know. Maybe
this is quite a while ago. But anyway, it was like there was people who were like, I'm streaming to do this, and how are you doing this? And it's not as bad as I have seen. I have seen some people who are like, I'm streaming for a charity, but 50% of the money is definitely going to me.
Oh, no,
because
this is
why
100%.
wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. No, this is
So-
more.
Oh,
There's
shit,
100%.
you do charity streams like that? I've never even thought about that before. Holy fuck.
Yeah, in fact, the Void Boy situation, I've just had a little pop-up on Skype. Yeah, it was one of his donators had said that they were thinking about killing themselves, so he turned his stream off and spent some time talking to that chap, and then did a stream afterwards dedicated to sort of raising awareness and some money for supportive suicide charities. So now who's the embittered cynic, Stephen? Destiny Vanel.
I don't remember exactly, but I remember when I watched that, it seemed like pretty fucking, I don't know, dude. But I don't know.
Matt,
I don't remember it well enough.
thoughts, Matt? Last
Yeah.
thoughts, man.
I have nothing to
There we
add.
Okay.
That covers all of the thoughts I had.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, let's wrap up the show. I gotta go pick up some little ones. That's actually what that thing that set off was. It reminds me every day.
Your
But
children are waiting, stranded because
no,
of
no,
us.
no, not yet, not yet. At least that's why I'm ending the show right now. But Matt, thanks for coming on, Heyoka. It's always great to have you on. Just old friends. Hopefully, you and Richard don't have to argue over e-sex and any eSports Express anymore. But any shout outs you want to do?
I don't know. Who do I normally give shout outs to?
All your friends at
Esports,
ESCX?
right? Yeah.
Team Liquid at esportsexpress.com. Finest serious news satire site on the internet. That's it. That's all I got.
All right, cool. Rich?
Yeah, obviously, shout out to you, Stephen and Matt, for coming on the show. Shout out to all the viewers, all of my loyal supporters. Shout out to Reddit for being consistently absurd and easy to mock. And I guess Riot Games need to be included in that as well. It's never a dull day in the esports office as long as those two ridiculous companies exist. And thanks to my new Republican and conservative overlords at Breitbart.com for paying me vast amounts of money to do what I was doing anyway for decidedly less money.
Nice, Steven?
Thanks everybody for watching. Shout out to Everyday Carry. If you carry stuff around with you, go to the website and sign up. Tell other people about it. Thanks to Richard Lewis and ChanManV. Love you guys too.
All right.
And Heyoka.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. All right, now we'll wrap things up. Thanks to all three of you guys for obviously doing the show today. Thanks for everybody that wrote in some questions. We didn't get to quite as many as I was hoping, so try to get to more of them next week. So write them in again next week, just in case if I get to kind of backlog and look at these from this past week. VODs will be up a little bit, probably 10-15 minutes after they normally are up, just because I got to get going here real quick. Audio is a little bit later, and I think that's going to be it, guys. Oh, one last thing. Yeah, Patreon plug one last time. Oh, forgot about the t-shirts, too. So t-shirts are getting designed because of the whole Patreon milestone thing, and God, I'm pretty pleased with the t-shirt. I haven't been able to show Richard and Steven yet, so I'll show you guys like really, really soon. But we should have them in the next 1 or 2 weeks, so you guys can check them out. It's not just the logo. It's not like the old ones. It's actually a new one that we have designed. So I think you guys will be pleased with it, and I'll show you really, really soon. But yeah, but patreon.com/unfiltered. Just check that out, and that's going to be it, guys. So for Heyoka, Richard Lewis, Destiny, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next time. Later.